We got General Manager Scott Fitterer here to answer questions you guys have for him. Just a reminder, please use the raise hand button if you have questions for Scott. With that said, I don't see a hand raised yet. Let's go to Jonathan Alexander to start us off.
Hey, Scott. Hope you're doing well.
Thanks.
Yeah. Matt Rule had mentioned that you all were able to restructure the contracts of Christian McCaffrey and Shaq Thompson and deferred to how much you all would save to you. So I was wondering, how much were you all able to save for each of those?
Well, I don't want to get into the specifics of it. We are thankful that Christian and Shaq were able to restructure for us. It's not something that we want to do long-term, restructure, kick money down the road. That's how you get in trouble. But this is one of those unique years where we're trying to create money. We were tied against the cap. The cap went down as well. So this is just one of those unique years that we're going to do this, but it's not something we're going to make a habit of going forward. And it can get you in trouble long-term, but we are very thankful for Shaq, Christian, and some of the other players that were able to restructure for us.
I don't see any other hands raised just yet.
Not many questions, huh?
Elena, you can go ahead.
Hi, Scott. I was curious, when we had talked to you when you're in your introductory press conference, you had mentioned, you didn't really have time yet to look at the roster and get into the nitty gritty of it. I was curious, now that you have had that time to kind of go over it, what stood out to you, and were there specific needs at positions or just any major takeaways you had?
Well, I think some of the things that stood out is just how much, good young talent is here. I think last year, Coach Rule and his staff, the pro staff, college staff did a great job with the draft, bringing in some young players. You have Christian, Brandon, Derek Brown, Chin, all these players to build on going forward. And we do have some good leadership as well. So that's something that we want to continue going forward. And we're excited about where we're at. It's good talking to the coaches, getting to know who the players are, what drives them, and just kind of the overall broad picture of the team. I think when you look at our team, there are some holes that we need to fill. When you can look at offensive line, corner, some other spots. But overall, I'm excited about the youth on the team and the direction that we're heading.
Let's go to David Newton, followed by Joe Person.
Hey, Scott, good to see you.
Thank you.
Wanted to ask you a lot of rumblings, I know, where you came from in Seattle about Russell Wilson. Just kind of, what are your thoughts on that? And is that a situation, should Russell become available, you'd want to get involved in? Because I think you did say all deals are on the table.
Well, that they are. Russell is under contract, so I can't talk about him specifically, obviously. And I don't want to speak for the Seahawks, so I'll let whatever's happening up there happen. I have great respect for the organization, great respect for Russell Wilson, and I think they'll work things out.
Hey, Scott, I think when we talked to you after you were hired, you were reluctant to say too much about any player because you've watched on film and so forth. Where are you now with your assessment of Teddy Bridgewater, and is that a position you might be looking to upgrade this offseason?
Well, I know there's been a lot talked about with Teddy this year. That's kind of been a big off-season talk. Teddy is our quarterback. I had a chance to meet him and talk to him. He's a total pro. He's been through a lot in his career. He's been through injuries. He's been the backup. He's been the starter. He is a guy that handles it all with total class. And we had a good conversation, honest conversation, and we told him, we were just very upfront about what was going on. I think that's the best way to handle things. I think there's been a lot of misinformation about Teddy as well, about other teams. And, not to get into specifics of that, but it's hard. It's hard on the players because, they have families, they hear things in the media. And so you do feel bad for them. But what I would say to Teddy and all of our players is not everything you see is true. There's a lot of misinformation out there. I'll check Twitter. I'm like, where is this coming from? But as far as Teddy, he is our quarterback. He is a total pro. And look forward to him coming back.
Because of where you pick, and Matt addressed this with us too, though, he said very clearly you guys will go evaluate the top quarterbacks in the draft. Is that, how active will you be with those 4 or 5 guys that look like first round?
I would say every year we're active. John Schneider would go out in Seattle and look at quarterbacks every year. We had Russell Wilson. I think it's a good practice to have as a GM and as an organization. Not only do you want to see him live in a game, but to go to a pro day and see what the velocity looks like, to see how they interact with their teammates away from the cameras, and just get up close and personal and get to know them. So this, obviously this year there's interest in what we're doing with quarterbacks, and but I would say, the next year, the year after that, we'll be doing the same thing. I'll be out looking at quarterbacks.
Go to Will Kunkel for the next question.
Hey, Scott. You said that you're just straight up honest with Teddy and you tell him the truth. What is that truth that you tell him?
Well, obviously there were some things about a trade that got out. We talked to him about that, and we acknowledged that we had talked to another team. And I think that's the best way to go about it. Now, some of these other trade information that's been out there, misinformation, we haven't talked to him about that, but a lot of that is not true. But what happened, we acknowledged and talked to him, and he handled it with total class. He was up front. Like I said, he's been through a lot of things in his life, and he handled it like a total pro.
In regards, just a follow-up for misinformation, in the interest of helping us not spread it, what is some of the misinformation?
Well, the funny thing is, I don't know if I want to clarify that, because we can use that to our advantage as well. So, I would just say there is more misinformation out there than there is facts.
Fair enough.
All right.
Let's go to Jason Brown for the next question.
Hey, Scott, this is Jason Brown, as Preston said, Spectrum News 1 here in Charlotte. My first time getting a chance to greet you virtually. I'm curious, with teams now having gone through, an off season with the pandemic, and granted, hopefully we're getting on the other side of that thing, but you all have experience now in trying to conduct, decisions, big decisions, draft decisions virtually. How much better prepared do you think this organization is, even though I know you weren't with them last year, but how much better is the organization prepared to handle with no combine and making evaluations on draft picks, because you've done it before already a season ago?
Right. You're right. I wasn't here, obviously, but I think everybody, even the players themselves, got used to conducting interviews and meetings online through Zoom and Teams and every other thing. The hardest part is I like to meet guys in person. I think you can tell a lot looking into a guy's eyes, shaking their hands, just seeing how they carry themselves. And that's why it's really important for us to get out to these pro days. This is really our first chance to get out and meet them. We've heard a lot from their coaches, through Zoom. We've watched them on tape, but we, usually at the Senior Bowl or the Combine, those are the times to really get to know the players. We're very fortunate that we coached the Senior Bowl this year. And our coaches did a great job. We were in the meetings with them. We saw how players learned. Just you really get a feel for the player themselves. But really, this spring we're sending a lot of coaches out. We're sending our scouts out to probably more pro days than we're used to, just to get to know the players. So that's probably the best way that we've handled this.
Let's go to Deshaun Brown.
Good afternoon, Scott, and thank you for sharing a few moments with us today. I've heard you mention a few other players also restructure their deals to allow flexibility. Who else did you renegotiate with, if you're able to share?
I will say another name that got out earlier was Paredes. He was one of the players, but there's been a couple others as well. And, like I said, we're not going to make a habit of this going forward. This is just hopefully a one-year thing for us.
All right, guys, we have time for one or two more questions if there are any. Darren, go ahead.
Scott, in talking about kicking the can down the road financially on that kind of stuff, how much dead money were you used to carrying in Seattle, and what's an appropriate amount? I mean, what's a comfortable amount from year to year?
A comfortable amount would be zero, ideally. It's I believe, I want to pay, you want to pay as you go, sign a bonus up front, a lot of money in that first year, and then just kind of not kicking the money down the road where you're going to have dead money in the future. So $1 would be too much, but it happens, and it's just the fact of having a salary cap and having to adjust year to year.
Let's go to Vincent Richardson for the next question.
Hey, Scott, it's Vincent from the Riot Report. You mentioned about having quite a few needs to fill this offseason, and obviously a big part that's going to be free agency. But how do you balance wanting to fill out the roster and not force yourself into certain directions in the draft, whilst also avoiding crowding out the opportunities for rookies to come in and contribute this year?
Sure. Well, what we do is the first thing we did when I got here, we built the free agency board, with Matt Allen, Pat Stewart, Rob, Luke. We sat down and kind of just looked at what the landscape looked like for free agency. After that, the college scouts came in. We built the draft board. And then once both boards are set, you just go back and look how they play off each other. What does the draft provide? This year, there's, seems to be a lot of offensive linemen. So then we'll go back and look at free agency and say, okay, what do we need to fill in and supplement through free agency? So we have created cap room this year. I would say we are going to be selective in how we do it. But just, we want to go into the draft without a lot of needs. So if we can fill a need in free agency, go into the draft and just pick the best available player, that would be ideal for how we go about this.
Go to Joe Person, followed by Ashley Mahoney.
Scott, where are you at left tackle in terms of Russell Okung and possible replacements?
Yeah, we did Trent Scott this offseason. Really, he played well when he had an opportunity last year. Daly played well when he had an opportunity. We'd like to see Little, step up and provide competition in that spot. And obviously the draft has quite a few tackles in it as well. So, as of right now, the more competition we can bring into that position, the better. And that's where we're at.
I appreciate your time. And of course, you spoke to the offensive line just now, but how important was it to really take care of Taylor's deal heading into the season, knowing that there's ample time between now and July to look at something long-term?
Yeah, obviously doing Taylor was really important to us. He's the foundation piece on this team. He's a leader. He's a great person. He's well respected by our coaching staff and everyone in the building. Everybody loves Taylor. I have not had the opportunity to meet him yet, but from the way he sounds, I look forward to it. Obviously, putting the tag on him, it's a big number. It really cuts into our cap number. We will continue discussions with his agent. We're excited about Taylor being a part of the organization, and we hope to have him long term.
Let's go to Mike Solarte, followed by Steve Reed.
Thanks, Preston. Hey, Scott, Mike Solarte, Spectrum News 1. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Here, there you go.
I guess.
I know you've got the whole checkerboard. You take this job after the whirlwind process. It was 48 hours before you got the job. Then you come in, and now you've got to do all the evaluations. You finally get settled with who your personnel could be and the moves you might want to make, and then the NFL cuts the salary cap number down on you. This is not how you envisioned your first general manager position to go, was it?
No. The one thing about the cap is we've known for a while it was going to be down. So, we started to adjust. I think the hardest part, though, is, not being able to be in front of the players, especially the college players. We're a build through the draft team. So we want to know who we're investing in, who we're selecting. So that's really the hardest part, is just getting down to the core of who the person is. So no, ideally, this wouldn't be the way to enter into this position. However, we have a great staff. We have great scouts out there. Matt or Coach Rule he's been awesome to work with. He's very active in the evaluation process. His coaches are great evaluators as a whole. Really enjoyed getting to meet them. And so we're able to compensate, but there are some things that you would like to do, and that's go out and meet the players. And I do wish the cap was higher.
And just as a follow, virtually, how are your skills in terms of evaluating these guys in the virtual setting? Because you ideally, like you said, you'd rather be sitting face to face with them as you're doing these interviews with these guys and talking to them and getting to know them.
right? You know, you do the best you can with what you have. Everybody's got the same playing field right now. And so there's no excuses. It's just getting down to the core, who the guy is, knowing how to ask questions, you know, over Zoom or Teams, and just being efficient with your time. And, you know, you really want to rely on your network of people. Your scouts have a huge network, a lot of relationships at the school. So we really lean on them for that information.
Scott, Mike sort of stole a little bit of my question, but what do you anticipate happening here in the next week or so, I guess, really, with a lot of veteran guys? And do you feel like further on down the road in free agency that a lot of guys are probably going to have to settle for a lot less than maybe they're thinking they're going to make? Is that a chance to get some good players further on down free agency?
Exactly. That's part of the free agency plan. You know, there will be a lot of players, you know, released this next week for teams to get under the cap. There'll be a rush at the beginning where a lot of money is spent on some of the top guys. And you really want to be selective on who you go about. We'll talk to a lot of agents starting on Monday and see where the market is. However, I think this might be one of those years that if you just wait and are patient, you might be able to get quite a few good players in that middle class, and they get pinched by the cap this year. So, you know, it's not, even though we've created a lot of cap room, this is not a year we're going to go wild spending money. We're going to be very judicious in how we go about this.
All right, guys, you got time for two more. So let's go to Elena Getzenberg and then finish with Vincent Richardson.
You mentioned kind of how important it is to kind of get to know these guys in person, and Matt touched on it too, but how are you kind of deciding what pro days you're going to or which certain scouts are going to? I know it's very limited in terms of attendance. So how is that kind of work? I know you'd like to go to, you know, send a lot of people ideally, but with this year's restrictions.
Yeah, you know, it's one thing that we did at the end of our draft meetings. We went through it and said which coach needs to go where. Which scout needs to go where does he have the best relationships? Who does he need to see? And then, Matt and I have just kind of piggybacked and said, hey, do you want to go here? Do you want to go here? And so we'll go out and we'll hit quite a few pro days ourselves. And I can't say there's like an exact, science about how we went about it. It's just like, who do we want to see? Who do we need to get to know? And that's how we went about it.
Hi, you talked about the desire to add more players at tackle, and also we've got both starting guards from this year hitting free agency. With quite a strong draft class, does this place an even greater value on sort of positional flexibility for offensive linemen in free agency, so that you can make the most of the draft class, and whether you add guards or tackles to move pieces you add in free agency around them?
Sure. I think you always want, flexibility with offensive linemen, because only so many suit up on game day. So you want guys that can play multiple spots. You can find a guy that can play tackle and guard, or guard and center, flip sides. I think those guys are really, really valuable. If they're not the starters, they need to be able to do that. And so that's one thing that we look at specifically with offensive linemen.
All right, guys, that's going to do it. We appreciate everyone taking the time. Scott, thanks for stopping by.
Great. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.